Welcome to plzsoccer.com on our YouTube channel and on X as well. This is the channel where we try and bring you as much content as possible and, of course, reaction to events in Scottish football. I'm Peter Martin, delighted to have your company. And, of course, the big talking point is Rangers sacking Philippe Clement. Our team of reporters are out there at Ibrox already. Alison McConnell, first of all, he had to go.
Yeah, I don't think there was any doubt about it. I think what was particularly concerning on Saturday afternoon in that defeat to St Mirren was just one, the exodus of fans leaving when that second goal went in, the empty seats at the end of that game, and also I think the sheer apathy around the ground. It didn't have the usual fury that would greet a result and performance like that. I think by the end of it, Philippe Clement, he looked a broken man at points in that game, particularly when he came into the press room afterwards. I think they were a team that were disjointed. There was a real lack of cohesion, a lack of belief, a lack of unity, a lack of any kind of fight, of heart, of spirit, of camaraderie. And I think always at full time, it just felt like a matter of time before the news that broke yesterday afternoon was coming.
Yeah, and of course, Blair, 17 months in charge, only one League Cup win. And the fans, when they start to vote with their feet, that's really what I think forced the Rangers board's hand, despite the claims of CEO Patrick Stewart that they had to stick with him.
Yes, Peter, I think, as Alison alluded to there, the apathy amongst the Rangers fans was something that Philippe Clement could never survive in his tenure as Rangers manager. Although it did start well with 16 wins in a row, he won that League Cup, of course, against Aberdeen. He only had one win against Celtic, that 3-0, and back in January. It's been a tenure that I think Rangers fans will look back on as just not good enough. He's come to the end of his reign here, and the Rangers fans departing en masse at the weekend was certainly indication of how they feel. This is not something that's been new, however. Back against St Johnstone, the Union Bears voiced their discontent with that protest against the board and against Philippe Clement with that mass walkout. And I think after the game against Queen's Park, I think all Rangers fans knew that it was simply a matter of time. This was absolutely coming after that result. Patrick Stewart came out, he doubled down after that and said that Philippe Clement leaving wasn't the way to go. It wasn't a financial decision. He said that Rangers have sacked managers in the past and it hasn't made any difference. But I think that game against St Mirren was the final straw. The performance from the players on the park, it was just too much for the manager to take.
Alison, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but when a manager ships 25 points in the league, when you lose back-to-back games against St Mirren, I think for the first time in 34 years, St Mirren win at Ibrox, you have the catastrophe of Queen's Park, and you have a team 13 points behind their greatest rivals in the league. Should he have gone earlier? Should the board have made that decision earlier?
I think a lot of people would agree with that. A lot of people, I think, will point back and say from the very beginning of this season, they'll look to that new contract that came on the eve of this campaign kicking off and question it, as many people did at the time. And then, of course, going back to, if you think back to that defeat to Aberdeen, which I think would have been October, for many people, that point was where it should have been changed. I think there'll definitely be an accusation that it was allowed to linger for far too long, that he stayed in position when it was very clear that this was a team that were not going in the right direction. Hindsight, of course, is a wonderful thing, but I think the signs were there that this wasn't a team in progress, that there was a real lack of any foundations being built or any direction of the team going just where they should have been. Of course, the caveat to that is maybe the Europa League performances in Europe have been strong, they've been good. You know, we all know that Fenerbahce are waiting in the wings now. However, domestically, it's just not been good enough. The lack of consistency has been a concern, and I think the tipping point has just obviously come in recent weeks. I think what it looked like on Saturday was that this was a group of players not playing for the manager, and I think when it gets to that stage, it's always inevitable that there's a decision going to be made. But certainly I think a lot of people now will look back and say, could it have been done sooner? Could something have been salvaged from the season had it been done sooner? I think you can say you understand why the board didn't do it for the start. You didn't really have a board hierarchy in place to make that decision a couple months ago, and also you could see what Patrick Stewart was alluding to when he said we don't want to keep doing the rinse and repeat. It hasn't been working. There was a sense of, look, let's just try and get to the end of the season. But I think when you see performances like the Queen's Park one and then against St Mirren, that becomes too difficult to justify. And even the performance against Hearts, it was a win in there. However, Rangers rode their luck at points in that game. There was a penalty that might have been given within it that would have changed the course of that result. I just think it's felt like a stay of execution here for the last 6 weeks or so.
Well, one man is gone. He has to be replaced. There is a dilemma here because you have a situation where there was a feel-good factor, Blair, about the possibility of a group of investors linked, of course, to the NFL franchise of the San Francisco 49ers. That would have brought a new board that could, in the end, in the summer, bring a new board with a new way of thinking and possibly a new face in there as a new manager. But right now they have to deal with the here and now with, of course, Fraser Thornton, Patrick Stewart, and they are looking and discussing with each other, well, who comes into the fray? Who will take the reins to the summer? And of course, we've heard Barry Ferguson, Kevin Thompson, Neil McCann, all sorts of former Rangers players all ready to help out.
Well, that is the million-dollar question, Peter. Who will be next in the hot seat at Rangers? One man who has taken training this morning, that was Issam Charai. He was only appointed on the 25th of January. He hasn't been here for the long term with Philippe Clement, and also, by its very nature, has not been tarred with the failures of Philippe Clement as well. So you would have to imagine that there is a long-term future for him at the club. He came here to Rangers wanting to be a manager. It's been no secret that he has left assistant positions in Belgium, assistant position at Strasbourg, but his only real managerial experience came with the Morocco under-23s. He did have success in that role. He won the under-23 African Cup of Nations with them, and like I said, he's been taking training this morning. So in my opinion, he will have something to do with the setup going forward. As to who comes in beside him, perhaps, well, the name that's on everybody's lips this morning is Barry Ferguson. It looks now that he is going to be the man taking interim charge of Rangers until the end of the season. And it's one that I think Barry Ferguson, he has enough credit in the bank with Rangers fans. Obviously, his stellar performances here as captain, that it will give the whole stadium a lift. It'll reignite that support, which I think is so crucial, given the apathy that was seen at the weekend. Going forward and looking a bit further into the future, I think this is always just going to be a stopgap until the summer comes. As you mentioned, there is this talk of investment. If a new investment group comes into Rangers, then they are certainly going to want their own man. But first, they have to appoint a sporting director. This is what Patrick Stewart has been saying. Patrick Stewart has said there'll be a sporting director coming in, working above Niels Coppin, and then he will be involved, or whoever they may be, will be involved in choosing the next manager. It can't be a case that Rangers appoint a manager and then a sporting director and just hope the two are compatible. They need to get this right off the pitch before they get it right on the pitch. And who they will go in the long term, well, time will only tell.
Yeah, just finally on that, Alison, of course there are so many conundrums there. A sporting director has a say. Who appoints a sporting director? Is that sporting director in line with a potential takeover group? There are so many unknowns in this. When you look at the bookies, the clear favourite to return is Steven Gerrard. I would suggest to you, Alison, there's a strange obsession with Steven Gerrard, a man who basically has failed after Rangers as a manager, and coming back. He wouldn't be coming back to the same opposition in Celtic, who basically disintegrated in front of him in that season when he stopped 10 in a row.
Or coming back to the same kitty of money either, unless of course this investment goes through this summer. I would agree with you. I think there's a sentimental, rose-tinted approach when it comes to discussions with Steven Gerrard. He came here, he won a title. I think he galvanised the Rangers supporters. Let's go mantra, and the manner in which he stopped Celtic winning 10 in a row affords him a very particular place in the minds and hearts of Rangers supporters. But I think if you analyse it a bit more rationally and a bit more coldly, I'm not sure that record would actually stand up to any kind of scrutiny. In actual fact, if you go back, there was a point, I remember being at a game, I think it was at Tynecastle, when Steven Gerrard looked as though he was on the brink of saying he'd had enough at Rangers before it turned around. a little bit. So I do think there is a certain sentiment that surrounds his name and what he's associated with at Rangers, rather than there being any kind of logical approach to that.
Thanks to Alison McConnell and Blair Malloy there out at Ibrox. The big question, who's going to be the new Rangers manager? Interim, it looks as if Barry Ferguson's in the box seat at the moment. We will stay on that story. Give us your thoughts on it. What do you make of Philippe Clement? Should the board have acted earlier? Should they have sacked him earlier to give someone the chance to maybe salvage what could have been a run in the Scottish Cup, or even getting closer to Celtic when you consider some of the results and the points dropped in the race for the title? Celtic now odds on to win the title, nobody within touching distance of them. But for Rangers fans, it's all about the future. It's about getting someone in there who can lead the club out of this season and into the next season with a new era and a fresh approach to things. Give us your view on who you think the Rangers manager should be, and of course give us your thoughts on that imminent takeover. It's getting ever closer. Can it get over the line and start a new dawn for Rangers? Okay, thanks to Alison and Blair. Stay with us on plzsoccer.com. Tonight on the programme, we will be discussing in detail the sacking of Philippe Clement, the defeat to St Mirren, and the way ahead for Rangers. And any developments at Ibrox, cover our social media. Right across it, we'll be looking at all the events as they unfold and bringing you the latest up-to-date news. Thank you for watching at Ibrox. Thank you to Alison and Blair. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button